Hello and welcome. I'm delighted to be here with you on this day, and I'm grateful for the invitation that I can speak about one of my favorite topics, taking your practice to the next level with the use of evidence-based coaching and generally about the use of models in coaching. Although you have seen my introduction, I prepared two slides just to give you a sense of who I am and why is it interesting or why is it worthwhile to be listening to my presentation. Personally, I've always considered myself to be a curious person. This is one of the statements on my personal homepage that I am an official curious person. Of course, no one gave me a certificate about being curious, but this is something that has been with me since my childhood. I've been reading a lot. I've been interested in all sorts of knowledge and all types of science. And eventually, I ended up in being around research and psychology. And this curiosity was the thing that really brought me to coaching because I've always been curious about other people and how they interpret their own lives and their own stories. Professionally, I would like to highlight three things. One of them is that I'm a partner at a Budapest-based boutique organizational development consulting company. We are called Innovators, and I think we are doing almost the same thing that most of you are doing. We are advising companies, we are offering individual executive coaching, group coaching, team coaching sessions and trainings to fellow leaders and help them to get even better in whatever they do in within their organizational settings. Besides that, I'm a coach and a coach trainer. I have a master practitioner accreditation from EMCC. Plus, I have certifications and accreditations and a range of other tools. And I wanted to highlight this because this really relates to what I would like to talk about. So I'm a master trainer of process communication model, of the mental toughness questionnaire, and I've been trained in a number of other tools as well. And the third thing I'd like to highlight about myself is that I'm a past vice president of research at EMCC International, which has now been changed to EMCC Global. And for a while, I was the person who oversaw the research and development activities of EMCC International. Why I'm saying that is that with this background, I think I have a bit of an insight on how theories are formed, how they are used, and what we can expect from them within our industry in general. And my focus for today is not to tell you what to do with your tools or with your theories. And in the upcoming minutes, I'm going to use these two words interchangeably. So theories and tools will be meaning kind of the same thing for me. So I wouldn't like to tell you what to do with your tools. I'm inviting you to consider the how of your practice, how you are using your tools, excuse me. So what is your process of selecting tools or applying your tools or you're evaluating your tools? Because what I see in the professional environment is there are lots of tools out there. Everyone wants to sell you something, a training in this, a course in that, an accreditation on this or that or whatever. But do we really have a way of assessing all these offerings in the coaching world? That's one of my questions. So the goal of this session, from my perspective, is to provide you with some food for thought about your tools, about the practice you are running, and of course, to start up a good conversation because I'm all in for conversations. So I would like to raise two general questions in this short presentation. First one will be, which tools and models do you use? And the second one is, how do you use these tools? And I have to tell you this at this moment is that all the graphics and everything I'm using were created with AI tools. So that could be an interesting extra conversation at the end of this session. So my first question is, which tools and models do you use? At this moment, and I know that you are listening to me speaking through a video connection right now, I would like to invite you to take a quick break and just take a piece of paper or your notepads and write down the three most important tools or theories that you are using in your coaching, mentoring, or development practices right now. What guides you? That's my question. on my list, my first would be transactional analysis. The second would be process communication model. And the third would be, for example, the mental toughness questionnaire. Three things that I use frequently. I could write in cognitive behavioral therapy as well as the fourth thing, or Gestalt coaching. So take a minute and write down a few of these tools or theoretical frameworks that you are using. Thank you. So once you have this list, I'd just like to give appraisal or applause for all of you because it is an essential part of our practice to use tools. We have to somehow manage the vast complexity of the other person, help us to understand the other person, and help the other person to understand themselves in the coaching process and the mentoring process. And for the ease of it, I'm going to use these two words, coaching and mentoring and personal development, interchangeably as well. So we all use tools and concepts. That's a part of our profession. And if I take a look at the EMCC competency framework, it even advises us to use tools. The seventh competency group is the use of models and techniques. And it says that a professional applies models and tools, techniques, and ideas beyond the core communication skills in order to bring about insight and learning. So that is competency definition. You have to use tools. The question, how do you know if the tool, model, framework, whatever you are using is good enough? How do you know that the elements on your list are good enough to be presented towards your clients? How do you know that they are making your reputation better or they are making you, well, a less respected part of our community? What is the way how you are assessing those? Of course, I cannot tell you by heart which model is good or not. I may have an informed opinion around certain things, but I'm not here to give a judgment on any of the tools or frameworks you are using. I'm here to give you a framework on assessing the models and tools you are using. And the thing I'd like to introduce you to, if you haven't heard of it previously, is the so-called evidence-based practice, which is, in a nutshell, is about applying proven, valid concepts in your professional process, a professional activity that is grounded in the broader empirical and theoretical knowledge base. And now I'm quoting Professor Grant from 2003. For me, this means that we are using things, tools that have been proven to work in a professional manner, that deliver the same result from time to time, that give us the same or predictable results, insights, and inputs to our clients from time to time. For me, evidence-based practice is about ensuring repeatable success. So I'm suggesting you take an evidence-based approach or look at the models you are using. The origin of the term evidence-based practice comes from the University of Sydney. And if I focus on the coaching application of evidence-based practice or evidence-based thinking, then what I would say is, it's on the slides, it's about distinguishing between coaching that is explicitly grounded in the broader empirical and theoretical knowledge base and coaching that was developed from pop psychology or the personal development genre. So making a distinction between empirical, theoretical knowledge and everything else. Another definition, another thought here is that the evidence-based perspective is an intelligent and conscientious use of relevant and best current knowledge integrated with professional practitioner expertise in making decisions about how to deliver coaching. You can look at me and you can immediately know that I love definitions. That's a part of my researcher background. I like to see what is right or wrong and what are the exact things we are talking about. So this is evidence-based approach, finding things that are grounded in the overall empirical or theoretical knowledge base. The question that could come from this is, are you familiar with the theoretical background of the tools you are using? And in general, how familiar are you with the science of coaching? And I think this is a pretty good question because a number of practitioners, and I think of them in a very appreciative manner, I really, I really love them. Some of us, some of the practitioners think of coaching as an art, a way of using your intuition. And I do agree with them to a certain level, because I think there is some kind of a magic in how people connect with each other. And I think most of you have experienced that magic when there were no background thoughts, there were no models in your mind, there was just the real human connection. And I think that works in a wonderful manner. But not all of us have the gift of doing that immediately or doing that in a repeatable, consistent manner with our clients. And that's where science can come in. And through investigation, it can create models, tools, whatever, ways that can develop us to get to that level of coaching where we can really call it art. So, how aware are you of the coaching science? And how aware are you of the general theoretical background of our profession? That's another question that you may be reflecting on if you would like to. We can even take a quick break here. There are a few keywords that I would like to highlight from so there are a few keywords, excuse me for that, that I would like to highlight from the previous slide. The first one is intelligent use. We don't want to say that you need to do everything by the book. We are just saying that be informed, make a choice with critical thinking in your mind, evaluate what you see inside, what you see in front of you. Is this a good evidence? Is this not? Who says it? Why? So start asking questions about your tools. Conscientious means that be balanced from a number of perspectives. Consider theoretical evidence, consider anecdotal evidence. Certain things may be working in one context. So, for example, a model may be useful for you in developing shop floor leaders, let's say in a metal factory, because they are dealing with blue collar workers or they are dealing with very specific circumstances. The same model may mean nothing within the framework of white collar workers or executive leadership. And I'm not saying that any of these are better or worse. I'm just saying that they may be incompatible. So be balanced. Take a look at your own perspectives on how you think of your models and integrate what you can see with your own expertise. It is not just the research that should be dictating what you should be using, but your own experience as well. Consider your own experience with your tools as part of the research. That's my invitation. Be a researcher. Yeah, that's one of my favorite advices. Be a researcher. Collect data, collect insights about from your own processes, from your own coaching sessions, where the things are working on. I don't know how many of you are doing diaries about your coaching or mentoring processes. How many of you take notes? But I regularly take notes, and I just like to write down that okay, this was the time when my favorite questionnaire didn't work at all because my client got an 8 on a certain scale, which means that, well, he should be the guy with the strongest willpower on earth. And then I'm meeting with a person who seems vulnerable, who seems lost in his current moment, and who really needs help, who is asking for help, and not just in a very adult manner, but in a childish manner. Well, in that moment, I of course focus on my client, but I make her know that okay, something was wrong with my question. And honestly speaking, this happens with all the tools. So be an evaluator of your tools. Use your critical thinking and be aware that your practice must be integrated with the research in the background. One more thing before I move to more interesting waters is that I like the perspective of evidence-based thinking, not just because it invites us to think of the stuff we are using, but it is important for the professionalization of our profession, because there are still a lot of parties, stakeholders out there who think of coaching as, I almost said a swear word, who think of coaching as something magical in the wrong sense, something which is not working, something which is just, dust and misguidance, which is nothing, or conversation, which is nothing more than just having a cup of coffee with someone else, and that someone else is asking you a lot of money for that conversation. So by proving in a scientific manner that our profession is working, that our interventions are predictable and they are delivering the same result from time to time, we can define our profession. We can strengthen the foundations of coaching as a profession. And we can paint a better picture of our profession towards the entire external world. And with this, with research and with the use of evidence in our communication, we can manage the boundaries of our profession, because there are still a lot of debates around what consists as coaching. Where are the differences between counseling psychology, between coaching and therapy, coaching and consulting? And I'm pretty sure that you know all the related fields that are somehow sometimes confused with coaching. And the whole idea of evidence-based thinking and the use of the evidence-based can help us in managing these boundaries. So that was the broader perspective. But let's get back to the main question. How do you assess whether your models or tools are good enough? And of course, this is not a single decision to be made, and it's always up to you. That's my most important message. It's up to you. I just want you to make a decision, to be critical of the things you are using. But what can inform your decision is the evidence which is behind your tools. And what I'm showing you on this slide is called the pyramid of evidence. And if you take a look at Google, you will find a number of these pyramids. The common about all of these is that they somehow rank order the types of research or research designs that provide the evidence for your tools. And let's just quickly go through these. And the message here for all of us is that if you can find articles, evidence, published studies that employ higher level of evidence from the pyramid, then you can think that your tool or model is better evidenced than the ones that don't have this kind of background. So try to look out for these higher levels of evidences to confirm whether your tool is good or not good, or whether the information about your tool is plausible, is valid, or is not valid. Of course, if you take a look at these, you may just simply think that, oh, I need to read lots of papers, scientific journals, and whatever to even to get close to these. And the sad news is that yes, that's my invitation for you to start reading and to start consuming the knowledge around coaching, because there is so many of the things that are out there. There are so inspiring studies, or at least for me. So let's take a look at these quickly. The weakest evidence is, of course, when you don't have evidence at all. When you just find something, start to use it, and you hope that it works. First level would be opinion articles, anecdotal evidence, which is like Zoltán said that whatever questionnaire is good, so from now on, I'm believing in this questionnaire. This is what we call anecdotal evidence. People have heard of it, it looks nice, then we accept it. Second level would be reference texts. For example, ones that describe the tool itself, sometimes or most often written by the creators of the tools, not independent professionals. Reference text, that's the second one. The third one, and I really love this level of audience, this level of evidence, is case studies. Case studies are evidence in which the tool is shown as it is working within a given case. So, like a clinical case, client came in, had this and that kind of challenge or problem. We used this method, this procedure, and this was the result. Full stop. These are case studies. Why I like case studies is that there are thousands of them. That's the good news. Bad news, they are not published because they are in your minds. They are in your heads. I'm a big person who sometimes forgets things that he's saying because I'm approximately 2 meters tall. So I'm a big fan of experience exchange groups where coaches come together, like group supervision, for example, supervision, and talk about their cases. Because this is a way how you can transfer your experience about given models, through which you can teach your peers and teach the profession about the working pros and cons of given theories. So, case studies. I'm advising you to talk about your cases, to bring them to supervision, to write them down, because all your cases, all your client work, all of them are evidence of something. And we shouldn't be hiding evidence from the world. Of course, take all the precautions around client safety and confidentiality, but bring forward your knowledge. That's my suggestion for all of us. The next levels that you can see, cross-sectional, within subject, between subject, and randomized controlled research designs. This is something in which we not always have an agreement in the research world, which one is stronger, which one is less stronger. But I think this reflects the current consensus. Cross-sectional studies are the ones where you have a group of people and you give them lots of questionnaires, assessments, whatever. You collect all the data and then you try to find meaning inside the results. Of course, some people do this with hypotheses before they are asking for the data. Some people are just fishing from the data pool without hypothesis. But the general idea is that cross-sectional studies are when a group of people are observed at the same time with a number of different assessments, cross-sectional studies. Within subject studies are the ones where you have the same group of people who take part in different settings or in different measurement settings at different times. So today I'm here and I'm being evaluated by you, how good I am in presenting through a video connection. And tomorrow I will be presenting to an entirely different group of people and will be assessed by them as well. This would be kind of similar to within subjects design. So people in different times, but same people. Between subjects design is where people are measured. So between subject design is when different people are used to test different test conditions. For example, in medical research. So different people are used to test different test conditions. Randomized controlled trials are the ones where even the researcher doesn't know throughout the process of the data collection which people, which populations are being in which research condition. Like in the case of testing new medications, certain people are given the real pills, the ones with real effective materials in it. Some people are given placebos. And only at the end of the trial, when all data is collected, that's where they are revealed to the researchers. So even the assumptions or the thoughts of the researchers are not able to interfere with the data collection. And meta-analysis is kind of a statistical approach or a methodological approach where previous studies, mostly previous randomized controlled studies, are collected together and even deeper levels of evidence is extracted from them because the data pool of these different trials are collected into a single pool. So with that all in your mind, I'm inviting you to take a look at the science, these resources behind your tools, and take a look at the evidence or the type of evidence you can find in those materials. What kind of evidence is it that wants or that is supposed to underpin your tools? Is it just an opinion article? Is it a meta-analysis or what? So consider the strength of the evidence behind the resources, behind the sources that are underpinning your tools. That's my proposition for you. And of course, this needs lots of reading. And I can tell you that can be really inspiring. And I can tell you that as a father of two small kids, that sometimes reading all the scientific papers in the middle of the night, that's an intellectually refreshing thing for me. So the question again is how strong is the evidence behind your tools? And with a bit of sarcasm, I can ask how strong should it be? Because I don't want to hide from you, as I'm a critical thinker, that there is criticism of the evidence-based practice as well. Some researchers, some practitioners think that the whole approach of evidence-based thinking can be counterproductive because it may not be a good approach to cover such a human-oriented thing as coaching or certain social sciences. So there is criticism of the evidence-based approach as well. Everything can be criticized, and this is what I love in science. So go out there, be critical about what you are using. And to foster, to support that critical thinking, I just brought you this slide. I wouldn't like to talk a lot about it. And this is about the evidence-based management initiative. Just take a look at it. I'd like to highlight one thing from it. And this is really similar or in line with Professor Grant with the previous formation or the previous definition of evidence-based practice meant is in point number 3 and 4 that we shouldn't be forgetting the preferences of our environment, preferences and values of stakeholders. Because sometimes I may have a very valid and very good tool in my mind, but my clients would like to do something, would like to use something different. I just recently had a conversation with an HR leader of a big company, and he was talking about how they have introduced a certain personality profiling tool to their operations, and that it was going very well. It was evidence-based and everything looked nice with it. And in the background, or parallel to this, I would rather say, there was a team of executives who hired a team coach to work with them. All went well, but the team coach, without agreeing to this with the HR, just introduced her own way of assessing personalities. And it went very well for that team. They really loved it. There were great results. Self-awareness skyrocketed, so everything was beautiful. But there was a problem that the two tools, one fostered or supported by HR and one by this group of executives, they were not compatible. They were very, very different. And in the upcoming months, the teams of those executives, well, they had to go through some kind of personality-based training. And then came the organizational challenge, which tool to use. And at the end of the day, there was no clear winner because in the case of certain teams, HR was strong enough to push through their own choice. And in the case of some other teams, the executives had a strong preference to have that tool in their pockets and in the pockets of the teams, and that other tool has prevailed. So sometimes we as practitioners face tough dilemmas. And I just like to give you the freedom that sometimes a tool may not be well evidenced. It may not be good enough from the scientific perspective. However, it may be the thing that your clients want. And if they can work very well with that, then you can count that wish as a serious piece of, or as a serious weight in the debate or in the dilemma. And sometimes you can just put aside your well evidenced tools. All I'm inviting you again is to make critical thinking or use your critical thinking in making decisions. So if you are still with me, and hope I hope you are, then my next question is, how do you use your models and tools? We have covered that it is a nice thing to be well versed in the background of your tools, to read all those things. Now the question is, by having your very well evidenced tools in your pocket, how do you use them? And you can use models and tools in a number of different ways. And once I had a complete presentation on that, and I can tell you this is not an excerpt from that. So here's an example. I like to use these personality-based communication tools. I think you may know most of them or a number of them, like MBTI, DISC, social styles, process communication model, and I'm quite sure that you could come in with things that I have never heard of previously. One way of using these tools, and this is in the first line, is to be driven by the model. When I, as a coach, I sit down with my clients, I have their profiles in my head, and I drive the interaction forward. I see that for the example that my client is, let's say, is a blue, whatever that means. And I just keep talking to him, keep connecting to him like I would be doing with the blue. And I just ask, let's say, tough questions, and I just go for the data. And I know that you know a number of examples. You can be driven by the model when your eyes are on your sheet, mostly, and not on your mind. And I think you are already knowing where I'm going with this. A second way of using these models is to be guided by them. When I have my eyes on my clients and I see what the client is doing, let's say asking data-based questions from me, then I will have this, okay, this is a blue, it's even on his paper. Then I will come back to him with data-based answers. So I'm collecting information from my clients and I'm guided by the model on how to react to that client, on how to engage with that client. As you can see, the client and the tool are getting a different focus, a different level of focus in this case. And a third way of using this is being informed by the model. And what I mean under that is that my focus is on my client. And based on that, based on what I'm seeing from my client and not from my paper, not from their report. I'm making an assumption, I'm making a hypothesis on what is the thing that I'm seeing here. I test that hypothesis based on the tool, not on the profile or whatever. I tested the hypothesis. Is this okay? And if my hypothesis passes the test, it says yes, everything points towards the idea that this is a blue, whatever it is, then I will react as if I would be reacting to a blue. And if my hypothesis fails, or I see something that is not fitting the model, then I'm just happily throwing the model out the window. And in brackets, and then I will just, after the session, I just go out through the door, pick up the pieces of my model and bring it back to my educators and to my supervisors. And I will take a look at what went wrong and who has the responsibility for it. Was it the tool or was it me? Was it the tool or was it the user who had the responsibility of non-proper working of the tool? So my invitation for you is take a look at your models, your tools on your piece of paper and reflect on them a bit. How strong are they in the whole of your practice? Are these tools driving you as you are making your professional decisions on the spot? Or are these just there as tools that help you to form hypotheses that inform you on the what ifs of your client? I would like to believe that I use most of my tools on the third level. I like to believe, of course, I will be wrong in so many cases, but I just like to observe how people are speaking, for example. And in one of the tools I'm using, the process communication model, gives me ideas that on what kind of sentence structures I can observe from my clients. And if I'm observing those, then what could be potential issue in the background? So whenever I see those sentence structures, like sometimes some of them are mine, really very long, complicated sentences, if I see those, then I start to have the hypothesis that okay, this guy may have a thing with control and with competency because the the professional approval seeking people frequently use these very complicated sentences. So if I'm hearing that, then I may ask a question from my coaching, or you may ask it from me that how are you with your feeling right now about being competent in this role? Has anyone given you feedback on that? How often is that feedback? And so on and so on and so on. And if my tool is good enough, then most of the times I will get the answer that this is a good question because recently I haven't been feeling so competent or so well in my professional environment. And yes, I'm really craving feedback. You can give me feedback, right? So, three levels. And my advice for you is to be more informed by the model, not to be driven by the model. And this example, or these three levels, can give rise to the challenges of using the models. And I brought you a number of challenges that you can consider with all your tools. This is my thinking invitation for you. So the first challenge of using tools, in my opinion, is the focus of attention or the attentional challenge. And this is about finding balance between your tool and your client. I just talked about this. So where is your attention? On the tool or on the client? And the question for your personal development is how much experience do you need to split your attention properly? How much training do you need so you can really be with your clients and just have the model run in the background of your mind? And where are you on that journey? The second challenge of using tools for me is the limitations challenge, knowing what to use your models for. Because most of us who get into learning a new tool, this includes me as well, we would like to think that, okay, this is cool and good for so many things. I would like to use it for this and that and that. But most of the times, tools have a much limited focus of use. And of course, you can imagine using them for other things. You can use them for other things, but they won't be as good. So, question, reflect on the boundaries, the limitations of your tools and models. Go back to their descriptions and see for yourself whether you are still using them for the goal that they've been designed for. Because I see lots of people using things in places where they shouldn't be used. So know what your models are for. The next level or the next challenge is the integration challenge. And I think lots of us are facing this after the first years of trainings and practices. And the question here is, how do you manage multiple models and tools that you have learned about? What do you do when you have mastered 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or even more different practices? There are approaches that you can think of this. And if you take a look at the competency framework of EMCC, and in the use of models and techniques category, you will see at the master practitioner level that practitioners should demonstrate their own unique approach to mentoring and coaching based on the critical evaluation of accepted models and learning from own practice and supervision. This is what we've been covering till now. And they formulate their own tools and systems to improve effectiveness. So this is the suggestion of EMCC, that take all the tools, take everything, and through your critical reflection, go through them and formulate your own tools. And this is one of the ways, one of the things that you can do with all the experience that you have. This is what we would call integration. Another way of using a number of tools is what we call managed eclecticism, which means that you have all these tools, like really tools in a toolbox. And when you see a situation that calls for one of them, you pick that, you use it masterfully, and you put it away. And you switch between tools. And my question for you is, where is your profession going? Where is your professional practice going? Are you working towards integrating your tools and formulating your own thing, like the Zoltán Csigás model of coaching? Or are you developing a very detailed toolbox from which you can always pick the perfect instrument or the perfect approach towards your client? Both of these are great ways, and I'm just interested in finding out which way you are going right now. On the identity level, with the toolbox approach, with eclecticism, you can become a super practitioner on the long term. With the other thing, with the by building your own theory, you can become a practitioner researcher hybrid, which is another interesting way of thinking of yourselves or of ourselves. So this whole thing can have an identity level reflection as well. And whichever way you go in your professional development, please don't forget to be aware of your personal and professional boundaries. Never forget the ethical background, the ethical practice, and never stop reflecting on yourself, because without these, all our tools can become worthless, as we may be using the heart, the essence of our profession. Thank you very much.
Hello, Zoltán.
Yep.
Hello, thank you very much for your speech, your presentation.
You're welcome. I was happy to give it. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, so I think curiosity is the motive power and the driving source of human beings learning. Yes, I agree with you. So the question is based on the curiosity from the audience. So a curious person might be very interested in a lot of things. So how do you manage your time and energy, and how do you anchor yourself in the field of coaching and mentoring?
Brilliant question, and I think I could talk endlessly about it, and with examples from my personal supervision. So how I manage my topics is I usually set books that I would really like to read, and I like to read one professional book at least in every 2 months, or well, I'm more happy if I can do one in every month. So I usually have a focus for every month in my studies, and then I spend the rest of it with anything which is not coaching. And I'm subscribed to a number of newsletters and magazines because I love all fields of stuff, and that's where I get my inspiration. So I have a study focus for every month. And what I usually observe myself when I get bored of coaching, this may be strange to say, but when my energies are down and I don't want to read another page of coaching research, then I definitely go and search for something entirely different. I love reading about space and cosmology, for example, and technology news. And how do I anchor myself in coaching? I love that question. I would need a bit more time to reflect on it, but uh, my clients help me because they keep on bringing me challenges and interesting conversations and topics. So I need to be up to date to be with them. And I never consider myself to be complete. That's an important thing.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll translate next. 第一个问题是关于好奇心好奇心它其实是人类学习的就是动力源泉。那一个有好奇心的人，他可能会对很多事情都感兴趣。那请问，就是今天的演讲嘉宾，他是如何管理自己的时间和精力的？那他是如何让自己把自己最后在所有的事情当中定位到自己喜欢并从事教练辅导这个领域的？那他的回答是关于管理时间和精力呢，他其实很多的时间都花在了阅读书籍，那尤其是关于就是教练方面的专业书籍就是他会把大量的时间花在这上面，那其余的时间呢，他会就是订阅报刊或者是一些杂志等等那些方面的内容是完全与coaching没有任何关系的，而且是各个方面的因为他对很多都很感兴趣。那就是对于他是如何最后选择了那个教练领域，是因为他就是发现他其实并不知道就是关于就是教练这方面就是能够带来什么，但是他发现客户在他辅导的客户能够给他带来更多的东西，因为他们不断的挑战他，不断带来新的话题，还有新的人生的经历和人生的故事，让他知道就是世界是非常的广大的他作为自己是一直不完整的，然后所以让他成为了一种动力，让他不断的去找寻就是一些新的东西和一些新的自己。So the second question, you really focus on the tool. So the topic of our webinar today is about tools. It's about theories, about tools. So let's imagine, because you finally mentioned three challenges and questions. So the tools have boundaries and limitations. So we need to reflect on those tools we used. So let's imagine you are a civilized citizen in a modern city. So you have convenient transportation. You can buy food. you can have digital pay, you have Wi-Fi, yes, you can surf on the internet, but suddenly when you wake up, you were in a wasteland. So how do you survive? So you must begin to think how to survive. So do you think it's similar to the coaching sessions, using the tools or not using the tools, or partially use the tools, or yes?
Oh, I like the
Or
question.
yeah, or ignore all the tools, just be yourself and forget all the tools. Yeah.
Whoa, this is a big question.
So you can
And
reflect more. I will translate first. Yes.
okay, so
Yeah. So 第一
what
个
I see,
yeah 第一个问题是，第二个问题是，
yeah,
因为
what I
在
see is that
讲座的最后so I will translate the questions first, and then you can
okay,
think. Yeah, you can have more time to think about this question. Yeah. 第二个问题是在讲座的最后，他提到了3个挑战和3个问题。就是其中有一个问题是关于就是教练辅导当中其实使用的工具它是有局限性的，然后那就是我们要不断的去在使用工具这个问题上面去反思。那就好比那是否这样的情况，那对于关于那个工具的使用，是否可以想象成一个人一个就是现代化的人，他在一个现代化的城市当中，他有便利的交通可以就是有就是便利的电子支付，可以买食物，然后也有 WiFi 可以自如的上网等等。但是有一天，当他身处一片荒原之中荒岛上面他唯一想到的是如何生存，但是他身边没有任何的现代的那种工具让他使用，所以他应该要去就是去发动脑筋去想自己应该如何去生存。那这样的情况是否跟就是使用工具和如何使用工具和激发自己更好的使用工具联系起来呢？
may I?
Yeah, yes, sure.
So what happened if I had no access to any of these tools? I love the question. So if I wouldn't have access to any of these questionnaires online, whatever things, I think I have already learned enough from their perspectives so that I could be using them. For example, I don't need uh, a PCM report to be able to read my clients. However, my readings are never as precise as what the official questionnaire is bringing to me. However, I'm good enough with my observations so that I can support my clients. And this is one part. I think that by using the tools, we get to a level of mastery that we can integrate these tools and we can work, even without the toolbox. You can come up with makeup instruments to replace them if they are needed. Of course, by respecting all legal whatever boundaries, blah blah blah. So that would be a first part of first part of my answer. Would you like to translate or should I continue?
Yes, I'll translate first. 就是关于刚刚那个问题其实是一个很有意思的问题。那如果我就是完全无法使用就是任何的教练工具，那我该怎么办呢？其实呢，它就是还是我们能够从不同的观点之中能够让自己找到方法比如说我们面对一个客户，我们不知道就是如果我们没有他的先前的资料，不了解他，不知道他是怎样的人，但是呢，我们可以在通过互动的过程中，通过观察，然后就是了解到这些支撑性的论据和论点，来帮助自己了解他是个什么样的人。
And the next part is that as we learn and use these models, we as persons or professional identities, we are shaped by these tools. So after learning a number of them, you become a different person, or that's my impression. So even without my tools, I have a part of them inside me. So at the end of the day, I am just using only myself as a final tool when engaging with my clients. So I think I would be capable of coaching at a pretty good level, even without anything, even at the end of the road. But
Yeah.
this sounds a bit egoistic. I don't want to put too much, expectations on me. I wouldn't like to elevate myself too much, but I think we are all formed by the things we are learning. So you eventually become a different person and a much more wise or mature one by using and learning all these tools.
Yeah. So 就是其实，在自己的专业发展和职业发展道程过程中会接触到很多不同的工具。然后那些工具呢，首先当你开始使用它的时候，你可能是没办法融会贯通的，或者是把它们整合的。但是日子渐渐久了之后，你会发现，就是这些随着那个经验的增加，或者是不断的练习，其实那些工具就成为了你的一部分，它其实成为了你的成为了你的一部分。那即使你抛弃了这些工具，它其实仍然是能够就是作为你自己就是去使用的，就是在你其实它已经融入你的内心。
And I think that's all. Was there any other part of the question that I didn't reflect on?
呃
Because it was a long one, I remember.
yeah, yeah. So maybe due to the time limit, so let's call the end to our webinar because there's another question. I will email you.
I would be happy to answer them in writing.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for having me. I was delighted to be able to be here with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
那刚刚我们的 Zoltán 嘉宾呢，他是欧洲导师与教练协会EMCC 的大师级的导师和教练。那如果您对导师和教练感兴趣，那请就是扫码关注一下可以向我们就是工作人员深度咨询一下什么是导师导师可以在你的职业发展当中能够真正帮助到你什么，你可能会有意想不到的收获。那在我们导师界呢，有5句金句。第一个是选对方向。那导师首要的任务是帮助学员要明确发展的方向，方向错了，与结果会渐行渐远。方向确定之后，导师激励挖掘学员的无限潜能，可以其快速有效的达成目标。第二点是提升能量，能量的提升和事物的推进可以同时的去完成。那导师辅导过程，它不仅仅强调达成目标，它更注重在达成目标的过程中能量级的提升和状态的提升。那第3点是激活资源导师辅导可以帮助学员发现并激活内在和外在的资源。第4点是成果量化，导师辅导过程中关键绩效的指标，还有关键行为指标、投资回报率都可以被有效的计量。第5点也是最特色的一点是隐形知识萃取。那我们的专业导师辅导呢，有一个特色技能就是隐形知识萃取。懂得萃取的专业导师不仅仅传承自己的经验和智慧，也可以通过萃取他人的技能传承给学员。就正如今天的嘉宾他提到自己就是除了非常喜欢阅读书籍，那些可行的就是去从可行的那些文件当中汲取到智慧和知识，同时呢，他特别乐于参加一些经验分享的小组。那所以他乐于参加那些经验分享小组呢，就是隐形知识获取的地方。那关于我们下一期主题是导师和教练辅导如何引领个人和团队在变革中蓬勃发展。那今天我们的讲座就到这里结束了，感谢大家的聆听